The more I watch Beyond the Gates, the more I start believing that the real villains are not even hiding anymore. They're standing in plain sight wearing badges, pretending to investigate crimes they secretly benefit from. And after watching Marcel question Leah about the plasma ring, I couldn't stop thinking, was that even an interrogation or was it a warning? Because honestly, what kind of detective walks into a conversation like that expecting a criminal mastermind to simply confess? Marcel asking Leah whether she's connected to plasma felt almost laughable to me. It instantly reminded me of Elon confronting Joey about the red market. Elon basically accepted Joey's denial at face value, and somehow that was enough for him to move on. That is not police work. That is selective blindness. And in BTG, selective blindness usually means corruption. That's why I've reached the point where I genuinely think Marcel and Elon may both be compromised in different ways. Maybe not equally guilty, but definitely morally rotten. They constantly prioritize personal loyalty, emotional bias, and self-preservation over actual justice. Meanwhile, Jacob stands out because he's the exact opposite. And maybe that's why I'm rooting for him so hard. Jacob feels like the only cop in this entire mess who still believes the badge means something. The Danny situation proved that perfectly. Naomi was furious when Jacob arrested her mother after the wedding shooting involving Bill, and emotionally I understood her anger. But logically, Jacob had no choice. Danny pulled a gun and opened fire. The fact that Bill may have deserved it doesn't magically erase the law. What makes Jacob interesting is that he refuses to create exceptions for people he cares about. In a show full of morally flexible characters, Jacob's rigidity actually makes him feel human. He knows doing the right thing will isolate him, yet he keeps doing it anyway. And that's exactly why I think he's in danger. Because the deeper Jacob gets into the plasma investigation, the more the system around him seems determined to sabotage him. Now, let's go back to Marcel and Leah because I honestly think this scene may become one of the most important moments in the storyline later. There are two possibilities here, and both are terrifying. The first possibility, and the one I personally believe the most, is that Marcel is connected to Plasma himself. Not necessarily the kingpin, maybe not even high-ranking, but connected enough to protect the organization when things get dangerous. Think about it carefully. Marcel confronts Leah in a strangely casual manner. There's no pressure, no strategic questioning, no attempt to trap her in contradictions, no urgency. It almost felt like he wanted her to know she was under suspicion before the police officially moved in. And if that's true, then Marcel essentially handed her time to destroy evidence, reroute shipments, silence witnesses, or disappear entirely. What if the interrogation itself was the warning? That possibility honestly gave me chills. Because if Marcel tipped her off intentionally, then Jacob may already be surrounded by enemies inside the department without realizing it. Every lead he discovers could already be compromised before he acts on it. But then there's a second possibility. What if Marcel is not officially part of Plasma, but he's simply incompetent and emotionally compromised? That might actually be even more dangerous. Corrupt cops are predictable. Weak cops are not. Marcel clearly has a soft spot for Leah, or at minimum, a level of trust that clouds his judgment. And BTG loves showing how emotional attachment destroys investigations. If Leah feeds him a believable lie, I can absolutely see Marcel ignoring critical inconsistencies just because he wants to believe her. He doesn't strike me as disciplined enough to conduct a real interrogation. He asks surface-level questions and accepts surface-level answers. And that weakness could destroy the entire operation. But here's where things become explosive. What happens if Leah discovers someone betrayed her? The moment that thought entered my mind, I immediately thought about Grayson. I don't know why, but the show keeps positioning Grayson in these tense little moments that feel suspiciously intentional. Tiny facial expressions, hesitations, nervous glances. BTG has become very good at using small details as foreshadowing, and Grayson constantly feels like someone carrying information he shouldn't have. My theory is that Grayson may have leaked something either intentionally or accidentally that led police closer to Leah. And if Leah figures that out, I genuinely think Grayson could die. Not metaphorically, literally. Because Leah doesn't strike me as someone who forgives betrayal. She strikes me as someone who survives at all costs. That's another reason I'm convinced she's far more important inside Plasma than the show currently admits. Her composure is too calculated. Her reactions are too controlled. Even under suspicion, she never truly panics. That tells me she's used to danger, used to deception, used to living with contingency plans. So if the upcoming major transaction is suddenly at risk of being ambushed, I can absolutely picture Leah sending out some kind of emergency signal to shut everything down instantly. And honestly, I think that's exactly what's about to happen. Jacob probably believes he's finally closing in on Plasma. The pieces are starting to connect. Informants are talking. Surveillance is building. The operation feels close. Too close? Which is exactly why I think BTG is preparing to rip victory away from him at the last second. Imagine the scene. Jacob and his team arrive expecting a massive bust, only to find empty warehouses, erased records, disconnected phones, abandoned vehicles. Every trace gone within minutes. Not because Plasma got lucky, but because somebody inside law enforcement warned them. That would absolutely devastate Jacob emotionally, because he would realize the enemy isn't just Plasma anymore. The enemy is inside the institution itself. And what if the failed raid is actually a trap? That possibility keeps haunting me. Because BTG repeatedly shows Jacob surviving near impossible situations by pure instinct and luck. Every time we think his cover is blown, somehow he escapes at the last second. But eventually luck runs out. Eventually somebody makes a move too fast. What if Plasma intentionally feeds Jacob false intel after learning he's investigating them? What if the canceled transaction is designed specifically to expose who inside the police department is leaking information? Or worse, what if Jacob himself becomes the target? I can already imagine a horrifying scenario where Jacob walks into what he believes is a disrupted deal, only to realize too late that he's isolated, surrounded, and being watched. And then there's the biggest question of all. Who is Plasma King really? Because I'm starting to believe the show is misleading us intentionally. At first, Plasma King felt like a singular mastermind hiding in shadows. But now I'm wondering if Plasma King is actually a title passed between people inside a larger network. That would explain why the operation remains so resilient despite constant pressure. Remove one player, another steps in seamlessly. And honestly, part of me wonders if Elon himself knows far more than he admits. His behavior around Joey was suspicious from the beginning. He accepted weak explanations too quickly. He redirected attention at convenient moments. He consistently undermines urgency in investigations connected to Plasma. Maybe he's not officially corrupt, but maybe he's protecting someone. Could Joey secretly work higher up in the organization than we realize? Could Leah answer directly to someone within law enforcement? Could Marcel unknowingly become the reason Jacob nearly dies? The terrifying thing about BTG right now is that almost every character feels morally unstable. Alliances shift constantly. Trust means nothing. Even scenes that appear simple often hide another meaning underneath. And that's exactly why I'm obsessed with this storyline. Because every time I think the investigation has hit a dead end, Jacob suddenly finds a new clue. And every time I think he's finally winning, the ground collapses beneath him again. That balance between hope and paranoia is what makes the Plasma storyline so addictive. I also think the writers are building toward a major emotional betrayal, not just a criminal reveal. Somebody Jacob trusts is going to disappoint him in the worst possible way. Maybe Marcel, maybe Elon, maybe even someone completely unexpected. And if Grayson really is the informant, then his fate may already be sealed. The scariest part is that BTG keeps hinting that Plasma doesn't just eliminate threats physically, they erase people socially, psychologically, financially. So even if Grayson survives, what if his life gets destroyed anyway? What if he disappears? What if everyone assumes he ran away? What if Plasma specializes in making victims vanish without obvious violence? Honestly, I wouldn't even rule out secret holding locations or illegal medical facilities tied to the Plasma trade itself. The show keeps emphasizing blood, transactions, disappearances, and coded communication. There's something much darker beneath the surface that we still haven't seen. And maybe that's the real reason Jacob's investigation feels cursed. Because he's not chasing ordinary criminals anymore. He's uncovering an entire hidden system